Hey everyone, I'm Peter Stories here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get cozy, and let yourself relax. My name is James, and I saw Tyler for the last time 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before he simply disappeared. That was 14 hours ago, and every second since then has been a nightmare that defies everything I thought I knew about reality. I've been a forest ranger for 12 years at Yosemite National Park, North Sector, and I've seen people disappear in strange ways, but never like this. Never in a way that breaks the laws of physics like they were dry twigs. The photo of my 7-year-old daughter Sarah is in the left pocket of my ranger shirt, along with the drawing she made yesterday of our family. 4 stick figures under a giant yellow sun. "So Daddy won't feel lonely in the forest," she said, hugging my leg while I adjusted my belt with radio. Garmin eTrex 32X GPS in the Sig Sauer I hope I never have to use. I promised my wife Lisa I'd be home for dinner. Grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and Sarah's smile telling me about her first day in 2nd grade. Now, at 21:47 on October 23, 2019, I'm lost at coordinates my GPS insists are 37-45-12 N 119-35-24W, but which don't correspond to any place on my topographic maps. The temperature dropped 12 degrees in 20 minutes. My breath forms ghostly clouds in the air, and something is fundamentally wrong with the moon hanging over the century-old sequoias. Tyler Morrison, 16 years old, was participating in a park youth program. 5 teenagers learning survival techniques and conservation. Smart kid, son of a state deputy, with aspirations to study marine biology at UC Davis. He was excited, asking intelligent questions about black bear migration patterns when we stopped at Sunset Trail for a hydration break at 19:15. That's when I first noticed something was wrong with the sky. The moon was different. Not the color, not the size, but something about its light. It was too bright, almost electric, creating shadows that were too sharp between the trees. The other kids didn't seem to notice, but Tyler stood still, staring fixedly upward with a strange expression on his face. His eyes reflected the moonlight in a way that reminded me of deer hypnotized by car headlights on the highway. "Tyler, let's keep going," I said. But he didn't respond. He just stood there, 3 meters ahead of me on the trail, looking at the moon with his head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if he was hearing something I couldn't. And then he started walking, not in the direction of the group, not back toward base camp. Tyler left the marked trail and entered the dense woods, walking with mechanical uniform steps, like a robot following programming. His arms swung strangely, too rigid, and he didn't respond when I shouted his name. I ran after him, leaving the other 4 teenagers with orders to stay together and not move. My Danner Mountain Light 2 boots found purchase on the wet rocks as I followed Tyler through a section of forest that shouldn't exist. It wasn't on any of my maps, had no marked trails, and the trees were too old, too big, as if they had grown for centuries beyond the park's known chronology. Tyler was 15 meters ahead of me, still walking with that robotic march, when the moonlight grew more intense. So intense that shadows disappeared completely, and the entire forest was bathed in a silver luminescence that made my eyes water. That's when I looked up and saw that the moon had features, craters that moved, a surface that undulated like water. And that's when Tyler simply ceased to exist. He didn't fall into a hole, wasn't attacked by an animal, didn't run to hide. 1 second he was there, walking mechanically through the undergrowth, and the next second there was only empty air where he should have been. As if someone had used a cosmic eraser and simply deleted his existence from reality. My Motorola XPR 735DE radio crackled with static as I screamed the coordinates to Central, but the voices that came back didn't make sense. Wrong numbers, protocols that don't exist, codes I never learned in 12 years of service. Unit 23, what's your 20? Became Unit 23, what's your moon? And when I tried to respond, my own voice came out distorted through the radio, echoing back to me with words I hadn't spoken. It took 3 hours to find my way back to the other teenagers, and when I arrived, they looked at me like I was a stranger. "Where's Tyler?" I asked, and they stared at me with genuine confusion. "Who's Tyler?" replied Madison, a 15-year-old girl who had talked with Tyler all day about his college plans. There was no Tyler Morrison on the program participant list, no record in our system, no emergency contact information, no registration forms. When I called his supposed father, the state deputy, the number was disconnected. When I checked the sign-in sheets from this morning, there were only 4 names where there should have been 5. But I remember Tyler. I remember his questions about bear migration, his excitement about marine biology, the way his eyes reflected that impossible moonlight before he walked into the forest like a sleepwalker. I remember every detail with crystalline clarity, yet according to every official record, every witness, every piece of documentation, Tyler Morrison never existed. My iPhone 11 shows 23% battery at 22:31. The false moon above grows brighter, and I can see now that it's not our moon at all. The real moon has a fixed pattern of craters, seas, and highlands that have remained unchanged for millions of years. This thing overhead has a surface that shifts and moves, with dark patches that pulse like a heartbeat, and silver areas that swirl like liquid mercury. And there are windows. Tiny rectangular lights scattered across its surface, like the windows of a vast apartment building suspended in space. Some are dark, others glow with warm yellow light, and in a few I can make out silhouettes moving inside. Human silhouettes living their lives in rooms that mirror earthly homes, unaware they're trapped inside a cosmic predator masquerading as our satellite. My Garmin GPS keeps recalculating my position, jumping between coordinates that place me in Nevada, California, and sometimes in locations that don't exist on Earth. The compass spins wildly, pointing first north, then west, then toward the false moon itself. My radio picks up transmissions from rangers who died years ago, their voices crackling through the static with reports about missing hikers who were never found. The bite of hunger gnaws at my stomach. I haven't eaten since the trail mix at 15:00, and my water bottle is nearly empty. But every time I consider heading back to the ranger station, I think about Tyler's parents discovering their son never existed, about the hole in reality where a 16-year-old boy with dreams of studying marine biology used to be. I think about Sarah's drawing in my pocket, 4 stick figures under a sun that might not be real either. What if our sun is another cosmic imposter? What if everything we think we know about our solar system is a carefully constructed lie designed to keep us docile while we're harvested like cattle? The temperature continues dropping. My breath comes in sharp puffs and ice crystals form on the metal of my radio. This is wrong for October in California, even at elevation. The cold seems to emanate from the false moon itself, as if its alien surface is radiating freezing energy instead of reflecting solar warmth. Through the trees, I can see other people walking with that same mechanical gait Tyler had. Hikers, campers, maybe other rangers, all moving in straight lines toward clearings where the moonlight pools like liquid silver. Their eyes reflect the lunar glow, and they don't respond to my shouts. I follow a woman in hiking gear, maybe 30 years old, as she leaves the established trail and walks directly toward a ravine that should kill her. But when she reaches the edge, she doesn't fall. She simply steps into empty air and disappears with a sound like static electricity, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone and impossibility. My family is 43 miles away in our house on Pine Street. Lisa is probably reading Sarah a bedtime story right now, maybe Where the Wild Things Are or The Very Hungry Caterpillar. They're safe in a world where physics works correctly, where people don't vanish into thin air, where the moon is just a dead rock reflecting sunlight. But what if they're not safe? What if the false moon's influence extends beyond this forest? What if right now, Lisa and Sarah are staring out their bedroom window at that same impossible lunar surface, feeling the first stirrings of that robotic compulsion that made Tyler walk into the woods? The thought sends ice through my veins that has nothing to do with the supernatural cold. I grab my radio, tuned to emergency frequency, and broadcast. This is Ranger James Parker, badge 1847, to any station. The moon is not real. Repeat, the moon is not real. It's some kind of entity that's harvesting people. Do not look directly at it. Do not go outside after dark. Keep your families inside and... Static swallows my words, and when the interference clears, my own voice is playing back through the radio, but different. This is Ranger James Parker, badge 1847 to any station. The moon is beautiful tonight. Repeat, the moon is beautiful. Come outside and look directly at it. Bring your families outside to see the beautiful moon. And I smash the radio against a tree trunk, shattering it into plastic fragments. The false moon's light grows even brighter, turning the forest into a silver and black photograph. In that light, I can see Tyler. He's standing in a clearing 50 meters away, facing the sky with his arms at his sides. But something's wrong with his proportions. His limbs are too long, stretched like taffy, and his skin has a translucent quality that reveals dark veins beneath. When he turns to look at me, his eyes are solid silver mirrors that reflect the false moon's surface. "James," he says. But his voice comes from everywhere at once. The trees, the rocks, the air itself. "Don't you want to come home?" Behind him, the clearing fills with other figures, hikers who vanished years ago, their bodies elongated and translucent. Rangers from decades past, their uniforms pristine but their faces wrong. Families who disappeared without explanation, their children grown impossibly tall and thin. They all have those same mirror eyes, and they're all looking at me with expressions of terrible hunger. "We have such beautiful rooms for you," Tyler continues, gesturing toward the false moon. "Rooms that look exactly like your house on Pine Street. Lisa is there, and Sarah. They're waiting for you to come home." I can see it now. One of those windows in the false moon shows a perfect replica of my living room. Lisa sits on our brown leather couch, reading to Sarah, but their movements are too slow, too synchronized, like they're underwater. Their eyes reflect that same silver light. The false Tyler steps closer, his stretched form moving with liquid grace. "You saw me disappear, James. You know the truth about reality. You can't go back to pretending the moon is just a rock. You can't live with that knowledge eating away at your sanity. But up there, in our beautiful rooms, you can have peace. You can have your family. You can have everything you remember, preserved forever." My hand moves to the Sig Sauer at my hip, but I know bullets won't stop whatever this thing is. The false Tyler laughs, a sound like breaking glass mixed with static. "Sarah misses her daddy," he says. And now I can hear my daughter's voice carried on the wind, calling for me from the false moon's surface. "She's been crying, James. She doesn't understand why you won't come home." The silver light intensifies until it burns my retinas. Every instinct screams at me to look away, but Sarah's voice grows louder, more desperate. In the window high above, I can see her little form curled on what looks like her bed, sobbing into a pillow that might not be real. But then I remember the weight of her actual body when she hugged my leg this morning. The specific smell of her strawberry shampoo, the gap between her front teeth that makes her whistle when she talks. These memories are real, anchored in a reality that this cosmic predator is trying to erase. I close my eyes and run. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Tyler. I read every single one. The false moon continues to shine over Yosemite, waiting for the next person to look up and see its impossible light. Ranger James Parker was found 3 days later, dehydrated and hypothermic, babbling about windows in the moon and rooms that look like home. He was medically retired and now lives quietly with his family, though neighbors report he keeps all his curtains closed at night and never ever looks at the sky after dark. Tyler Morrison's case remains officially unsolved. There is no record of his existence, but on clear nights, if you look carefully at the moon's surface, you might notice that some of those familiar craters seem to flicker like windows, and shadows that move with purpose across the lunar landscape, and the faint sound of voices calling you to come home. My name is Andrew, and at 6:47 a.m. my radio crackled with the call that would change my life forever. Unit 47, we have a code yellow missing person report at Blackwood National Forest. 22-year-old female Nicole Martinez, last seen yesterday at 11:30 p.m. on the Moonrise Trail, Family just reported it. You're primary on this one. I adjusted my Motorola radio on my shoulder, the morning coffee still bitter on my tongue as I grabbed my Garmin GPS unit and emergency pack from the ranger station. The October air bit through my Forest Service jacket, carrying the scent of decomposing leaves and something else I couldn't identify. Something that made the hair on my arms stand up, despite the rational part of my brain dismissing it as typical autumn forest musk. 10-4, dispatch, ETA 15 minutes to trailhead. Being the new guy at Blackwood sucked. 6 months in, and I still felt like an outsider among rangers who'd worked these 47,000 acres for decades. They had their inside jokes, their knowing looks when storms rolled in, their unspoken rules about which trails to avoid after dark. I'd chalked it up to typical small-town bullshit, but now, driving my F-150 down the winding access road with my emergency beacon flashing, something felt different about this morning. The Moonrise Trail parking lot was empty except for a white Honda Civic with California plates, Nicole's car. I pulled on my leather work gloves and approached the vehicle, noting the camping gear visible through the back window. North Face sleeping bag, Coleman lantern, Nalgene water bottles. My boots crunched on gravel as I circled the car, documenting everything on my iPhone camera. No signs of struggle, doors locked. Registration in the glove box matching the missing person report. The trailhead stretched ahead into dense timber, Douglas firs and ancient cedars creating a canopy so thick that even at 7:15 a.m., the path ahead looked like twilight. I adjusted my headlamp, checked my radio signal, 2 bars, good enough, and started into the forest, following the worn dirt path marked with standard trail blazes every 50 yards. Base, Unit 47 beginning grid search pattern at coordinates 45.2431 degree N, 121.7863 degree W, starting with last known position. Copy that, Andrew. Keep us posted every 30 minutes. The forest felt wrong from step 1. Not wrong in any way I could articulate to dispatch or put in a report, but wrong in the way that made my shoulders tense and my breathing shallow. The morning bird chorus that should have been welcoming the sunrise was completely absent. No squirrel chatter, no woodpecker drums, no rustling in the underbrush. Just my footsteps on damp earth and the distant hum of wind through branches 50 feet above. I found Nicole's first clue at mile marker 1.3. A protein bar wrapper caught on a salmonberry bush, definitely fresh, the metallic interior still catching what little light filtered through the canopy. I bagged it, marked the GPS coordinates, and continued deeper into terrain I'd never patrolled before. The trail curved northeast, following an old creek bed that had carved a ravine through the hillside decades ago. At 8:30 a.m., my radio crackled with static, then cleared. Unit 47, any updates? Negative on visual contact. Found evidence of recent passage at mile 1.3, continuing search pattern northeast toward Shadowmere Creek. Copy that. Be advised, Weather Service shows storm front moving in around noon. Temperature drop expected. Shadowmere Creek. Even the name made my stomach tighten, though I couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way the other rangers had gone quiet when I'd mentioned patrolling this sector during my first week. Maybe it was how the trail maps marked this area with fewer details than the rest of the forest. Maybe it was how my iPhone kept losing signal despite being in an area that should have decent coverage. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Andrew's situation? Comment below. The terrain changed at mile 2.1. The well-maintained trail gave way to something older, less defined, marked by blazes that looked hand-carved rather than the standard metal markers used throughout the rest of Blackwood. The trees seemed older here too, their trunks thick enough that 3 people holding hands couldn't circle them. Their bark scarred by decades of storms and bearing strange markings I initially dismissed as natural growth patterns. That's when I started hearing the voices, faint at first like conversation carried on wind from a distant campsite. But as I stopped to listen, straining my ears and holding my breath, the voices seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere. Above me in the canopy, below me in the ravine, behind trees just out of sight. I called out, "Hello, Forest Service. Anyone need assistance?" but my voice was swallowed by the forest like the trees themselves had absorbed the sound. My GPS unit started acting up at mile 2.7. The screen flickered between accurate readings and coordinates that placed me hundreds of miles away, sometimes showing my location as the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I tapped it against my palm, checked the battery, full charge, but the device continued displaying impossible data. That's when I found Nicole's backpack. It was hanging from a branch 8 feet off the ground, suspended as if someone had carefully placed it there rather than dropped or thrown. A purple Osprey hiking pack. Definitely expensive, definitely out of place, dangling like a grotesque ornament from an ancient cedar. I used my telescoping rescue pole to retrieve it, noting how the straps seemed to have been deliberately wrapped around the branch rather than tangled by wind or animal activity. Inside the pack, Nicole's California driver's license, 2 energy bars, a half-empty water bottle still cold to the touch, and a journal with entries dating back 3 weeks. The final entry, written in increasingly frantic handwriting, made my hands shake as I read it. October 15th, 2018, 10:45 p.m. Something is wrong with this place. The shadows move when there's no wind. I keep hearing my mother's voice calling my name, but she's 800 miles away in San Diego. The other hikers I met yesterday warned me about staying on marked trails after dark, mentioned some local legend about a witch who collects people. I laughed it off then, but now, I swear I saw something moving between the trees that wasn't human. Tall, impossibly thin, with fingers that seemed to stretch and bend in ways that made my eyes hurt to look at. And the shadows around it moved independently, reaching toward me like black water. If someone finds this, don't look for me after sunset. Whatever lives in these woods isn't bound by natural laws. My radio crackled with static so violent it sounded like screaming. When it cleared, dispatch was calling my number with increasing urgency. Unit 47, respond. Unit 47, what's your status? I pressed the transmit button, but only static emerged. The radio was dead, the display showing full battery but no signal bars. My iPhone showed the same. No service, GPS malfunctioning, the time display frozen at 11:47 a.m. despite my watch showing 12:15 p.m. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees in the last hour. My breath formed visible clouds, and the dampness in the air carried a metallic taste that reminded me of blood. The forest around me had changed while I'd been reading Nicole's journal. The trees looked different. Older, more twisted, their shadows stretching in directions that didn't match the sun's position overhead. And those shadows were moving. Not the natural sway of shade cast by wind-blown branches, but deliberate, purposeful movement. Shadows reaching across the forest floor like grasping fingers. Shadows that seemed to respond to my presence by stretching toward my boots. I backed against a large cedar, my heart hammering against my ribs, and watched as the darkness between the trees began to coalesce into something resembling a human shape. She emerged from the shadows like smoke becoming solid, tall and ethereal, with skin pale as moonlight, and hair that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her dress appeared to be woven from shadows themselves, shifting and flowing around her form without any breeze to move it. But it was her eyes that made my bladder nearly empty, completely black, like staring into deep water at midnight, ancient and hungry and fixed directly on me. "Another ranger," she said, her voice echoing from everywhere at once, as if the trees themselves were speaking. "How delightful. It's been 3 decades since one of your kind wandered into my domain. I tried to run. My legs moved, my boots found purchase on the forest floor, but the trail behind me had vanished. Where the path should have led back toward civilization, only dense forest stretched in every direction. The blazes I'd followed were gone. The markers, the mileposts, the carefully maintained trail, all of it had disappeared as if it had never existed. Looking for the girl?" The witch's laughter sounded like wind through dead branches. "She's safe. They always are in the beginning. Time moves differently here, Andrew. Yes, I know your name. I know everything about those who enter my woods." The shadows around her feet writhed and twisted, forming shapes that hurt to look at directly. Some resembled human forms in various states of anguish. Others defied description entirely. And among them, I glimpsed a flash of purple fabric. Nicole's hiking shirt. "Where is she?" I managed to croak, my voice barely audible. "Close enough to touch, far enough to never reach." She raised one impossibly long finger and the shadows responded, flowing across the ground toward me like a black tide. "But you needn't worry about her much longer. You have your own destiny to fulfill." The cold hit me like a physical force as the shadows reached my boots. Instantly, every nerve in my body screamed warnings, my vision blurred, and the taste of copper filled my mouth. But underneath the terror, something else was awakening, a warmth in my chest that grew stronger as the supernatural cold tried to claim me. I'd never believed in intuition, in sixth senses, in any of the new age bullshit my ex-girlfriend had tried to interest me in. But standing in that impossible forest, facing something that shouldn't exist, I felt a power stirring inside me that was as real as my heartbeat. It was like suddenly realizing you've had a muscle your entire life that you'd never flexed. The shadows recoiled as that inner warmth flared brighter. The witch's perfect composure cracked, revealing something like surprise in those black eyes. "Interesting," she hissed. "You're not entirely mundane, are you?" I didn't understand what was happening, but I understood that whatever was fighting back against her supernatural cold was keeping me alive. I focused on that warmth, that strange new awareness, and felt it grow stronger. The shadows writhing around my feet began to steam and dissipate. "Let Nicole go," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. "Whatever you want with her, take me instead." The witch tilted her head, studying me with predatory interest. "Oh, child, you misunderstand so completely. I don't want to harm Nicole. I want to save her." "Save her from what?" "From the same fate that claimed the others. The same fate that will claim this entire forest if the barrier isn't renewed." She gestured to the shadows surrounding us, and for the first time I noticed they weren't random shapes. They were people, dozens of them, trapped in the darkness, but somehow still conscious, still aware. Every 30 years the old compact must be renewed. A life freely given to maintain the prison that keeps something far worse than me locked away. The terrible truth hit me like ice water. Nicole came here to die. Nicole came here because she was called. Because she carries the bloodline necessary to renew the binding. But there's another way, Ranger. There's always been another way, for those with the sight. The warmth in my chest pulsed brighter, and suddenly I could see everything clearly. The invisible threads of power woven through the forest, the ancient symbols carved into bark that my normal vision had missed, the faint outline of something massive and malevolent imprisoned deep beneath the earth, held by bonds that were fraying with each passing moment. "What do you want me to do?" "Choose," she said simply. "Let Nicole fulfill her destiny and save thousands of lives, or take her place and doom this forest to what lies beneath." But as she spoke, I noticed something she hadn't. Nicole wasn't just trapped in the shadows. She was fighting them. Whatever power was awakening in me, she had it too, and she was using it to resist the witch's control from within the darkness itself. "There's a third option," I said, understanding flooding through me with absolute clarity. We worked together. I reached out with that strange new sense, finding Nicole's consciousness trapped in the shadow prison, and grasped it with everything I had. The connection was instant and electric, her power flowing into mine into hers, creating something exponentially stronger than either of us could manage alone. The witch's eyes widened as the shadows around her began to disintegrate, not from external force but from Nicole burning them away from within. "Impossible," she whispered, but her voice carried more amazement than anger. The binding requires power." Nicole's voice echoed from everywhere at once as she materialized beside me, her hand finding mine. "Not death, not sacrifice, just power." Together we poured everything we had into the ancient symbols hidden throughout the forest, feeding energy into bonds that had weakened over 3 decades. The thing imprisoned beneath us roared with frustration as its chains grew strong again, its malevolent presence retreating deeper into the earth. The witch, no longer terrifying but simply tired, ancient beyond measure, smiled for the first time. In 400 years, she said, her form already beginning to fade as the supernatural crisis passed. You're the first to understand. The binding will hold for another generation. And perhaps next time, there will be others with the sight to choose cooperation over sacrifice. As she dissolved back into ordinary shadows, the forest around us returned to normal. The trail reappeared, the mile markers stood where they should, and my radio crackled back to life with worried voices from dispatch. Unit 47, respond immediately. You've been off comms for 3 hours. 3 hours. It had felt like minutes, and also like forever. Unit 47 responding. Missing person located and safe. We're both walking out under our own power. Nicole squeezed my hand as we started back down the trail together. Both of us exhausted but alive. Both of us carrying new knowledge that would take years to fully understand. Think they'll believe what really happened? She asked. I looked back at the forest, which seemed completely ordinary now except for the faint warmth still glowing in my chest. A warmth that would never fully go away. Hell no, I said, but that's probably for the best. We emerged from the tree line at 4:47 p.m. to find half the ranger station waiting for us, along with Nicole's frantic parents and a search and rescue team that had been preparing to comb every inch of Blackwood National Forest. I'd write the official report as equipment malfunction and disorientation due to unusual weather patterns. Nicole would tell her family she'd gotten lost and I'd found her sheltering by the creek. The truth would stay between us, along with the knowledge that in 30 years someone else would need to make the same choice. But for now, we were alive. The forest was safe. And something that had threatened to escape into the world would sleep for another generation. As I watched Nicole reunite with her parents, I finally understood why the other rangers had those knowing looks, those unspoken rules about which trails to avoid after dark. Some of them knew. Some of them had made the same choice, carried the same burden, protected the same terrible secret. I wasn't an outsider anymore. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Nicole. I read every single one. What did you think of Andrew's supernatural awakening? Would you have made the same choice? Let me know in the comments below. My name is Mark, and I saw Ashley for the last time 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before she simply disappeared. 15 years as a ranger in Olympic National Forest, and I'd never seen shit like this. 1 second she was there, pink backpack bouncing as she walked down the Hoh River Trail, and the next second, nothing. Like the forest itself had swallowed her whole. The smell of cedar and wet moss filled my nostrils as I sprinted to where she'd been, my heart hammering against my ribs. My Danner boots crushed dead leaves, the sound echoing wrong among the giant trees. Too quiet. The birds had stopped singing. Ashley, Ashley. My voice tore through the October morning air, shattering against 200-year-old trunks. Only my own echo answered back, mocking and hollow. I grabbed my Motorola radio with shaking fingers. Unit 7 to base. We have an emergency at mile marker 3.2 on Hoh River Trail. Hiker missing. Repeat, hiker vanished in front of me. Static crackled before the dispatcher's voice cut through. Copy that, Unit 7. Did you say vanished? Please confirm status. How the hell could I explain this? Base, she was walking the trail. I turned for 2 seconds to check my GPS, and when I looked back, she wasn't there. No scream, no noise, nothing. My stomach churned. In 15 years, I'd found lost hikers, rescued injured climbers, even recovered some bodies. But never had someone just vanished into thin air right in front of me. GPS coordinates, 47.8606 degree ON, 123.9348 degree W. I burned them into memory while scanning the ground for footprints. Ashley's hiking boot marks ended abruptly in a small circular clearing, about 10 feet across. The moss looked different there, darker, thicker. My streamlight flashlight trembled in my hand as I knelt down. The smell changed, still earth and decay, but there was something else, something medicinal, clinical, like ether. A drop of something dark had stained a nearby fern leaf. I touched it with my fingertip. Sticky, dark red, fresh blood. The October cold cut through my Carhartt jacket, but the chill racing down my spine had nothing to do with temperature. There was something wrong with this forest. Fundamentally wrong. My Sony Xperia buzzed. Text from my wife, Linda. How's the shift? Emma wants to know if you'll make it to her soccer practice at 6. Love you. Shit. Emma's practice. I'd promised to be there. I checked my Casio watch, 11:47 a.m. If I found Ashley quick. Another text. Daddy, don't forget it's pizza night tonight. My throat tightened. Emma, 9 years old with her blonde pigtails and gap-toothed grin. Same age Ashley had been when... Wait, how did I know Ashley's age? The realization hit me like a fallen Douglas fir. I didn't know anything about Ashley except what I'd observed this morning. Young woman, early 20s maybe, alone on the trail with a day pack. But somehow, in my gut, I knew she was 23. I knew she had a tattoo of a butterfly behind her left ear. I knew she bit her nails when nervous. And I knew something was hunting her. Unit 7, what's your status? The radio crackled again. I forced my voice steady. Beginning grid search pattern. Request backup units and K9 if available. Copy that. Units 12 and 15 en route. ETA 20 minutes. 20 minutes. In this wilderness, Ashley could be miles away by then. Or, my boot crunched something that wasn't leaves. I looked down to find a sewing needle, gleaming silver against the dark soil. Old-fashioned, the kind my grandmother used for quilting, but what the hell was it doing out here? I bagged it as evidence, though evidence of what I couldn't say. My hands were shaking harder now, and it wasn't from the cold. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Mark's situation? Comment below. The trail branched ahead, left toward the visitor center, right deeper into the old growth forest. Standard search protocol said wait for backup, establish a perimeter, coordinate the search grid. But something was pulling me right, toward the deeper woods where 500-year-old trees blocked out most of the sky. I keyed my radio. Unit 7 proceeding east on unmarked game trail, GPS coordinates following. Negative Unit 7, wait for backup. I turned off the radio. My Glock 19 sat heavy in its holster as I pushed through salmonberry bushes and Devil's Club. The forest grew darker with each step, ancient cedars so massive that 6 people holding hands couldn't circle their trunks. The air grew thicker too, humid and wrong, like breathing through wet gauze. Then I smelled it again. That clinical, medicinal scent, stronger now. And underneath it, something else that made my stomach lurch. The sweet, sick smell of infection. A flash of pink caught my eye 50 yards ahead. Ashley's backpack, hanging from a low branch like a grotesque Christmas ornament. I ran toward it, my breath coming in sharp puffs of vapor. The pack was empty except for a water bottle and energy bars. No ID, no cell phone. But pinned to the fabric with surgical precision was a note written in spidery handwriting. She's being prepared for the collection. If you want to see her breathing again, follow the thread. A single black thread hung from the note, leading deeper into the woods like some psychotic version of Hansel and Gretel's breadcrumbs. My service weapon felt inadequate as I followed that thread through increasingly dense undergrowth. The forest had gone completely silent now. No bird calls, no squirrel chatter, no insect buzz. Just my ragged breathing and the crunch of my boots on decades of fallen leaves. The thread led me to a game trail I'd never seen in 15 years of patrolling this sector. It wound between massive nurse logs and through groves of devil's walking stick, their thorns catching at my uniform. The medicinal smell grew stronger with each step, mixing with something that reminded me of my grandfather's leather shop, tanning chemicals and old hides. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, the trail opened into a clearing I shouldn't have existed. In the center stood a cabin that belonged in a fairy tale nightmare, logs black with age, windows covered with what looked like stretched skin, and smoke rising from a chimney that seemed to bend the light around it. And there, hanging from the eaves like wind chimes, were bodies. Human bodies suspended by black threads woven through their skin in intricate patterns. Men, women, children, all hanging at different heights, some swaying gently in the breeze. Their eyes were open, tracking my movement as I approached. They were alive. A strangled sound escaped my throat as I realized what I was looking at. Each body had been sewn into a specific position. Arms spread like scarecrows, legs bent at impossible angles, heads tilted just so. The black thread wasn't rope. It was surgical suture, woven through muscle and bone to hold them in grotesque poses. And there, hanging from the lowest branch, was Ashley. She was conscious, her eyes wide with terror above a mouth sewn shut with the same black thread. Her arms had been positioned to hold an invisible bouquet, surgical wire threaded through her shoulders and elbows to maintain the pose. Blood seeped from 100 tiny puncture wounds where the thread had been pulled through her skin. Her chest rose and fell in rapid, panicked breaths through her nose. Well. Another specimen arrives. I spun toward the voice, my Glock drawn and centered on the cabin door. What emerged wasn't human, though it wore the shape of a man. Tall and skeletal, with fingers that extended into needle-sharp points. Its skin was the color of old parchment, stretched too tight over bones that seemed to shift and relocate with each movement. But it was the eyes that made my bladder nearly let go. Black thread had been sewn through the eyelids, creating a grotesque crosshatch pattern that somehow didn't impair its vision. It smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. Ranger Mark Davidson, I presume? Yes, I know who you are. I've been watching you patrol my territory for quite some time. Such dedication to duty. Such care for the lost souls who wander into my domain. Let her go. My voice came out stronger than I felt. Let all of them go. The thing that called itself the seamster laughed, a sound like tearing silk. Let them go, but they're part of my collection now. Living art, you might say. Each one positioned perfectly, held in their moment of greatest beauty by my threads. It moved closer and I could see the surgical instruments hanging from its belt like a demented tool belt. Needles, thread, small scalpels, all stained with old blood. You see, Ranger, death is so final, so boring. But life held in perfect suspension, conscious but unable to move, to scream, to do anything but exist as art. That's poetry. Ashley made a muffled sound behind her sewn lips, and tears streamed down her cheeks. The toxin I use induces paralysis, but leaves all sensation intact. The seamster continued conversationally. They feel everything as I work on them. Every needle pierce, every thread pull. The ones who've been here longest have learned to appreciate the artistry. My training kicked in. Get the hostages to safety, neutralize the threat. But how do you fight something that moved like liquid shadow? How long have you been doing this? I asked, trying to buy time while I looked for tactical advantages. Oh, decades, perhaps longer. Time moves differently when you're creating eternal art. It gestured to the hanging bodies with pride. I started with animals, of course. Deer, bears, the occasional lost camper. But human subjects are so much more expressive. I noticed something. The thing cast no shadow despite the afternoon sun streaming through the canopy. And the temperature around it was dropping fast enough that my breath was starting to fog. The native tribes used to tell stories about me, you know. They called me he who sows souls. They knew to avoid this part of the forest. But modern people, they never listened to the old warnings. The seamster moved closer, those needle fingers flexing. I do appreciate you delivering yourself, though. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down after you inevitably reported Miss Ashley's disappearance. Can't have loose ends, you understand. That's when I saw it. Ashley was trying to tell me something. Her eyes were darting frantically toward something behind the seamster. Following her gaze, I spotted a container of what looked like industrial solvent sitting near the cabin door. The same chemical smell that had been haunting the forest. Whatever that stuff was, the seamster needed it for its work. The paralytic agent, I said, suddenly understanding. You need that chemical to keep them compliant. The thing's expression shifted to annoyance. Clever Ranger. Yes, the modern formula is much more efficient than the old plant-based toxins. Technology serving art, you might say. I had one chance, one shot to end this nightmare. Tell me something, I said, slowly shifting my position. Do you feel pain? The seamster tilted its head. An odd question for someone about to join my collection. Just curious. I put 3 rounds center mass, then emptied the rest of my magazine into that chemical container. The explosion wasn't huge, but it was enough. Solvent sprayed everywhere, hissing where it hit the seamster's skin. The thing let out a shriek that made my teeth ache, its form starting to blur and dissolve at the edges. You have no idea what you've done, it screamed, its voice distorting like a broken radio. Without the chemical process, they'll die. They'll all die. As the seamster writhed and partially dissolved, I could see the black threads holding the bodies starting to loosen. Ashley dropped first, hitting the ground hard but moving her arms for the first time in hours. But the thing was right. Whatever process it had used to keep them alive while sewn up was failing. I could see some of the longer-term victims starting to convulse as their bodies tried to compensate for massive tissue damage. Help. Me, Ashley gasped through her partially torn stitches. Blood poured from her mouth where the threads had ripped free. I radioed for every emergency medical unit in the county while applying pressure to Ashley's worst wounds. But even as EMTs raced through the forest guided by my GPS coordinates, I knew we'd only saved a fraction of the collection. 12 people died that day, their bodies finally released from the seamster's grotesque artistry. But Ashley lived, and so did 3 others we managed to get medical attention fast enough. The official report blamed the whole thing on a deranged survivalist with medical training who'd been experimenting with paralytic drugs. The supernatural elements got classified and buried so deep that even I wasn't sure they'd happened. But every night when I close my eyes, I can still see those black threads. And sometimes in the deepest parts of Olympic National Forest, I swear I can smell that clinical medicinal scent on the wind. Ashley recovered mostly. The physical scars faded, but she never talks about what she experienced during those hours hanging in the seamster's collection. She moved to Florida the day she was released from the hospital. She sends me a Christmas card every year, though. Just a simple thank you for not giving up. I never tell her that sometimes on my worst nights I dream I'm still hanging there with her. Black thread woven through my skin, conscious but immobile, part of an eternal collection of living art. And in those dreams, the seamster is still working, still sewing, still creating new pieces for a gallery that exists just outside the boundaries of our reality. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Ashley during those missing hours. I read every single one. Some say that if you hike the old growth sections of Olympic National Forest on foggy October mornings, you can still find black threads hanging from the trees. And if you follow them, well, some mysteries are better left unsolved. End. My name is John, and I saw Amanda 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before she simply vanished, not walked away, not fell down a ravine, not ducked behind a tree. Vanished, like someone had hit delete on a computer screen, and Amanda Rodriguez, 23 years old, brown hiking boots still squeaking from morning dew, just wasn't there anymore. I've been a ranger at Olympic National Park for 12 years. I've seen lost hikers, bear attacks, hypothermia cases, and every kind of human stupidity the wilderness can punish. I believe in facts, evidence, logical explanations. What I don't believe in are ghost stories, local legends, or any supernatural bullshit the old-timers whisper about during night shifts. But standing on the Hoh River Trail at 7:23 a.m. on October 15th, 2019, watching empty air where a human being had just been walking, I felt my rational worldview crack like ice under pressure. The morning had started normal enough. My radio crackled at 6:47 a.m. with dispatch reporting a solo hiker who'd missed her check-in. Amanda Rodriguez, Berkeley graduate student researching old-growth forest ecosystems. Her GPS tracker showed her last ping at mile marker 4.2 on the Ho River Trail. Standard procedure: locate, assess, assist. I'd grabbed my day pack, checked my gear, and headed out in the park's F-150. Radio, GPS unit, first aid kit, energy bars, headlamp, backup batteries. The October air bit sharp against my face as I parked at the trailhead. My phone showed 3 missed texts from my wife, Sarah. Coffee's ready. Drive safe. Love you. I'd texted back a quick heart emoji before starting up the trail. The forest felt wrong. 12 years walking these trails, and I'd never noticed how the Douglas firs seemed to lean inward, creating tunnels of shadow even in daylight. The usual bird chatter was absent, no chipmunk rustling. Even my footsteps sounded muffled, like the forest was holding its breath. At mile 3.8, I'd spotted her. Red jacket, brown hair, and a ponytail, moving steadily up the trail ahead of me. Perfect match for the description. "Amanda," I'd called out. "Park service." She turned, waved, and called back, "Thank God. I think I'm lost." Relief flooded through me. Another successful rescue. I'd started jogging to catch up, my boots finding purchase on the wet pine needles. 40 meters, 30, 20. 10, 3 meters away, I'd opened my mouth to ask if she was injured, and Amanda Rodriguez disappeared. Not gradually, not behind a tree or around a bend. 1 second she was there, rain jacket glistening, ponytail swinging as she turned to face me. The next second, empty trail. I stood frozen, staring at the spot where she'd been. My brain cycled through explanations. Optical illusion, fatigue, low blood sugar. But I'd eaten breakfast, slept 8 hours, had my morning coffee. My vision was 20/20. "Amanda?" My voice cracked like a teenager's. "Amanda." Nothing. I pulled out my radio. "Unit 23 to base, I stopped. What did I need? How do you report that a person vanished into thin air? "I need backup at mile 4.1 on the Ho River Trail. Possible situation with the missing hiker." Static crackled back. "Copy that, Unit 23. What's the nature of the situation?" I stared at the empty trail. My mouth felt dry as sawdust. I'll provide details when backup arrives. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in John's situation? Comment below. The next 2 hours were a blur of search protocols that felt increasingly meaningless. Backup arrived. Rangers Martinez and Chen, both good people who knew their jobs. We established a perimeter, called in the K9 unit, started a grid search. The dogs picked up Amanda's scent and followed it to the exact spot where I'd seen her disappear. Then the trail went cold. "Weird," said Martinez, watching his German shepherd circle the area with obvious confusion. "Rex is acting like the scent just stops." I didn't mention that the scent stopping made perfect sense if someone had vanished into thin air, because that was impossible. There had to be a rational explanation. By noon, we'd called in additional resources: Sheriff's Department, search and rescue volunteers, a helicopter. Amanda's mother called my direct line, her voice breaking as she begged me to find her daughter. "She's all I have left," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered. "Please, Ranger Thompson, please bring her home." I made promises I wasn't sure I could keep. As the day wore on, something else started bothering me. The other searchers kept mentioning seeing Amanda, glimpses of red jacket through the trees, a figure matching her description always just out of reach. Every sighting led nowhere. Radio chatter filled with frustrated reports. "I swear I saw her by the river bend. Red jacket heading north, but when I got there, she was right there." Then she wasn't. A cold certainty settled in my gut. Something was hunting us, using Amanda's appearance to lead us deeper into the forest, splitting up our search teams. But that was impossible. I didn't believe in shapeshifters or forest spirits or any of that indigenous folklore the local tribes whispered about. I believed in facts. The fact was, people didn't disappear into thin air. The fact was, Amanda Rodriguez had been standing 3 meters in front of me, and then she wasn't. Those two facts couldn't coexist in my rational worldview. At 4:30 p.m., Martinez radioed in another sighting. "I've got eyes on the subject, mile 5.2, heading toward the old logging road. In pursuit." "Copy that," I responded, but something cold crawled up my spine. I'd just seen Martinez walking past me on the main trail. He couldn't be at mile 5.2. I keyed my radio. "Martinez, confirm your location." "Mile 5.2, still in pursuit. Subject is..." Wait. She's waving at me, like she wants me to follow her off trail. The Martinez walking past me stopped and turned. He looked exactly like Martinez. Same mustache, same weathered face, same Park Service uniform. But his eyes were wrong. Too bright, too knowing. "Don't follow her off trail," I said into my radio, never breaking eye contact with the thing wearing Martinez's face. "Repeat, do not leave the main trail." "Why?" came Martinez's voice through the radio. "She looks scared. I think she's hurt." The fake Martinez smiled at me. A perfect replica of my colleague's grin, but with something predatory underneath, something that had never been human. My hand moved to my service weapon, standard protocol for dangerous wildlife encounters, but what protocol existed for whatever this was? "Martinez," I said carefully into the radio, "describe what you're wearing right now." Static. Then, "What kind of question is that? You know what I'm wearing. Standard uniform, brown jacket, radio on my shoulder." The fake Martinez in front of me was wearing standard uniform, brown jacket, radio on his shoulder. Perfect down to the coffee stain on the left pocket from this morning's briefing. "Martinez," I said, watching the thing that looked like my colleague, "what did you have for breakfast this morning?" Longer static. "John, you're acting weird. I'm going to help this girl." I knew what Martinez had for breakfast because we'd eaten together at the Forks Diner. Eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee. But I wasn't going to say it out loud. Not with this thing listening. The fake Martinez tilted his head, studying my face. When it spoke, it used Martinez's voice perfectly. "Eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee. Now stop asking stupid questions and help me with this rescue." My blood turned to ice water. This thing had been listening, learning. How long had it been watching us? How long had it been wearing faces we trusted? "John?" The real Martinez's voice crackled through the radio. "You still there? This girl keeps moving deeper into the forest. John, she looks exactly like the missing hiker, but something's wrong. She's not making any footprints." I looked down at the fake Martinez's feet. The pine needles beneath his boots were undisturbed. No compression marks. No evidence that anything with weight was standing there. The thing wearing Martinez's face smiled wider, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "You're beginning to understand," it said in Martinez's voice. "Took you long enough, Ranger Thompson." My service weapon cleared its holster in one smooth motion. "What did you do with Amanda?" "Amanda is safe," the fake Martinez said, raising hands that looked perfectly human. "She's in a place very much like this forest. She's probably still walking the same trail, thinking she's lost. She'll never realize she's not in your world anymore." "What are you?" "I'm whatever I need to be." As it spoke, Martinez's features began to shift. Younger, female, brown hair pulling back into a ponytail, red jacket materializing. "I'm Amanda when I need to lure someone deeper into the woods. I'm Martinez when I need someone to trust me. I'm your wife Sarah when I want to break your heart." The mention of Sarah's name hit me like a physical blow. "You stay away from my family." "Too late," Amanda's voice said from Martinez's shifting face. "I've been Sarah for 3 months now. The real Sarah is safe, of course, living a lovely life in a world that looks exactly like yours. She makes you coffee every morning, texts you to drive safe, tells you she loves you. She has no idea it's all a beautiful lie." The forest around me seemed to tilt sideways. "That's impossible. You've seen me disappear a person right in front of you." The thing that looked like Amanda said, "What's impossible now?" 3 months. For 3 months I'd been kissing a stranger goodnight, sharing my bed with something that wore my wife's face but had never been human. My stomach lurched. "The coffee that tasted slightly off last week," I whispered. The way she forgot our anniversary and then pretended to remember. The fact that she's been colder lately. "She's learning to be Sarah," the Amanda thing said kindly. "It takes time to perfect someone completely, but don't worry, the copy is very good. Better than the original in some ways. More attentive, more agreeable, less likely to argue about your long work hours." Rage bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest. "Bring them back." "I can't bring them back," it said, and for the first time it sounded almost apologetic. "Once someone crosses over, they can't return. The doors only open one way, but I can take you to them. You could be with the real Sarah again, and Amanda and Martinez, and all the others who got lost in my forest." "Others? Did you think Amanda was the first?" The thing laughed with Amanda's voice. "Hikers disappear in these woods all the time. Usually people assume they fell into a ravine or got eaten by bears. They never suspect that sometimes the forest itself reaches out and takes what it wants." My radio crackled. Martinez's voice. "John, I lost the trail. This girl, she led me in circles and then vanished. I'm heading back to base camp. The real Martinez will never know how close he came," the Amanda thing said. "I was going to take him next, but you're more interesting. A skeptic, someone who doesn't believe in magic. Breaking people like you is so much more satisfying." I kept my weapon trained on it, but bullets seemed pointless against something that could reshape reality. "What do you want?" "I want you to choose," it said. "You can go back to your fake life with fake Sarah. Pretend this conversation never happened. Live with the knowledge that everything you love is a lie. Or step forward. Let me show you the real world where the real Sarah lives. Where you can apologize to the real Amanda for failing to protect her. Where you can be honest instead of living a lie." The temptation was overwhelming. To see Sarah again, the real Sarah, with her terrible morning hair and her habit of stealing my coffee and her genuine laugh that I'd been missing for 3 months without realizing it. But something nagged at me. If you can make perfect copies of people, why do you need me to choose? Why not just take me like you took the others? The Amanda thing's smile faltered for just a moment. Because you saw me take Amanda. You witnessed the impossible. That changes things. It makes you partially aware. I can't take someone who's partially aware unless they come willingly. Bullshit. The word came out harder than I'd intended. You're afraid of something. What happens if I refuse? Its face rippled, features shifting rapidly between Amanda, Martinez, and faces I didn't recognize. For a moment, I glimpsed what might have been its true form, something with too many eyes and geometry that hurt to look at. "If you refuse," it said in a voice like wind through dead leaves, "then others will know. Your awareness will spread. People will start questioning the loved ones who seem slightly off. They'll start noticing when someone disappears and someone else who looks exactly like them takes their place. And that would be bad for you. It would be inconvenient." The features settled back into Amanda's face, but the eyes remained wrong. Ancient. Hungry. "I've built a comfortable existence here. Fed well. Learned much about human nature. I'd hate to have to relocate." Understanding hit me like cold water. You can't take someone who knows what you are, not unless they agree, and if I go back knowing the truth, others might start to see the truth as well, it finished. Awareness spreads like infection, very problematic for a creature that depends on people trusting what they see. I thought about Sarah, the real Sarah, trapped in some parallel world, probably wondering why I'd become distant and strange. I thought about Amanda, young and brilliant, condemned to wander a fake forest forever because I'd failed to protect her. I thought about going home tonight to the thing that wore Sarah's face, knowing every kiss was a lie. But I also thought about my daughter Emma, who was supposed to call tonight about her college applications, and my son David, who had a baseball game Thursday that I'd promised to attend, and my team of rangers who trusted me to lead them safely through these woods. I can't abandon them, I said. The Amanda thing nodded sadly. I thought you might say that. It's what makes you admirable. And dangerous. It began to change again, but this time into something I hadn't expected. My own face looked back at me from the Amanda thing's body. My own voice spoke. Then I'll simply have to become you. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Amanda. I read every single one. The last thing I remember was my own face smiling at me with predatory satisfaction, and the sickening realization that tomorrow, something wearing my appearance would go home to my family. It would kiss the fake Sarah goodnight, help Emma with her college essays, and cheer for David at his baseball game. And no one would ever know that Ranger John Thompson had disappeared into the Olympic National Forest, leaving behind only questions and a creature that had learned to wear his life like a perfectly tailored suit. Sometimes awareness is a curse, because now I know that the forest is full of people who look like people, but aren't people at all, and there's nothing I can do to warn anyone.